let's go to today's unpopular opinion.
Unpopular opinion.
Okay. Today's unpopular opinion is censorship is a good thing. I know what you're thinking out there. Oh my God. Rob has descended into communism. He doesn't want us to have access to the news. He's trying to silence our voices. Put the brakes on. Take a deep breath of fresh air. And let's get into today's unpopular opinion. This is something I've debated with people. When they make a blanket statement like censorship is bad, it's always bad. I'm not talking about what should and shouldn't be censored here. And my aim is not to change your mind like with all of these unpopular opinions. It's only to have you think. Dan, how do you think people reacted on Instagram? I made the statement censorship is a good thing. What do you think they voted on Instagram?
I think they vote false.
They did vote false. 95% of people voted false, and a lot of people voted. A lot of people voted on this one. It makes sense, right? We pride and value a great deal the idea of freedom of speech, one of the champions of which, Mr. Elon Musk, a man who's protecting freedom of speech while he, bans journalists he doesn't agree with and voices that, he doesn't like. The political left with their safe spaces, things you can't say because it's hurtful and we're all so delicate and beautiful. The political right who say you can't say anything nowadays, but then on the other hand, ban books in schools, I mean, politically speaking, we're all over the map with censorship. So let's try and get some clarity, shall we, today? Why does it sound like what have the Romans ever done for us? Because censorship is a bad thing, apart from preventing hate speech, protecting children, preventing the spread of false or misleading information, protecting national security, ensuring privacy, limiting the spread of extremist propaganda, regulating content ratings in movies, for example, moderating online communities, reducing exposure to gratuitous violence, preventing defamation, protecting intellectual property rights, ensuring ethical advertising, filtering spam, maintaining cultural sensitivity, blocking access to illegal content, preventing the spread of harmful conspiracy theories, restricting media that initiates violence or civil unrest, regulating political advertising, protecting the integrity of elections, ensuring fair trials. Apart from those things, what has censorship ever done for us? Am I right, friends? It's just a bad thing, isn't it? So on that note, let's look at some pros and cons. By the way, I'm seeing a lot of interesting comments in the chat. I will get to them in the second half of the show, as I always do. Let's get into it. The pro column agreeing that censorship is a good thing. Protecting public safety and national security. Censorship prevents the spread of harmful information such as instructions for making explosives, inciting violence, spreading false information that could lead to panic. Regulating content helps protect citizens from dangerous or destabilizing material. Preventing hate speech or harmful content. Without censorship, hate speech, racism, sexism, and other harmful ideologies can be spread unchecked. Censorship helps create safer, more respectful society by limiting the reach of speech that initiates violence, discrimination, or social unrest. It shields children from inappropriate material. Censorship prevents minors from being exposed to explicit, violence, or otherwise age-inappropriate content. This ensures that children's mental and emotional development is not negatively impacted by unregulated access to harmful media. Limits the spread of misinformation and fake news. In the digital age, false information spreads quickly, and boy, is it getting faster and more pernicious, right, friends? Influencing public opinion, elections, and even health decisions. Hello, the Cambridge Analytica scandal that pushed hundreds of thousands of Britons into Brexit. And let's continue. It protects cultural and religious sensitivities. Different cultures and religions have deeply held values that could be offended by certain types of content. Censorship can maintain social harmony by preventing material that is unnecessarily provocative or disrespectful. Prevents exploitation and harm. Censorship is necessary to combat illegal content such as child pornography, human trafficking, or content promoting self-harm. All things I think we can all agree we are glad that censorship exists for, right? Regulating content ensures that individuals, specifically vulnerable populations, are not exploited. And finally, encourages responsible media and journalism. A degree of censorship can ensure that media outlets adhere to ethical standards and avoid sensationalism, propaganda, or harmful rhetoric that could manipulate or mislead the public. What has censorship ever done for us? I know it's not a popular opinion, friends. 95% of you, at least out there, would agree. And look, you know, I have a radio show. I have 2 radio shows where I never hold back, and I say more or less whatever the hell I want. But there is definitely an area of grey we're not considering here, right? So let's get into the cons, saying no, censorship is a bad thing. This is where 95% of you land. It threatens freedom of speech and expression. Censorship can suppress diverse opinions and limit the free exchange of ideas. In democratic societies, freedom of speech is a fundamental right, and restricting it can lead to oppression and authoritarianism. Now, this is completely true, and I completely believe this, but freedom of speech is not necessarily freedom of consequence. You can say whatever the hell you like, but expect consequences, as I learned quite readily when I got a death threat. Yeah, let's continue. It gives too much power to authorities. If governments, corporations, or organizations can control what cannot be said, they can manipulate information to serve their own interests. This can lead to propaganda, suppression of dissent, and erosion of democracy. Yeah, those who scream the loudest about freedom of speech, that express the fear. I'm talking about the West here. I'm not talking about in authoritarian governments, because I'm sure our Russian friend Eugene has a lot to say on this. Because Eugene is living in a society where ideas are just outright censored. The news has a party line that it has to toe. And I sympathize with that. And it's true. It can be a slippery slope. Can be used to silence opposition. Here is something that I'm sure that Eugene would agree with. Many authoritarian regimes use censorship to silence political opponents, activists, journalists, and marginalized voices. What starts as protecting the public can turn into suppressing inconvenient truths and blocking necessary debate. Hinders innovation and progress. Open discussions, even on controversial topics, drive societal progress. Censorship can prevent scientific research, social movements, and new ideas from gaining traction, slowing down cultural and technological advancements. Let's continue. I did want to leave extra time for more of the pros and cons today, just because I know this is a sensitive subject. What counts as harmful content is subjective. One group sees as dangerous, another may see as vital information. Censorship creates risk that those in control abuse it to push their own moral, political, or economic agenda. And here, again, we use the example of China, Russia, the governments out there that limit access to information and very much control the narrative that the public hears. And we can all agree that is dangerous, right? That's censorship taken to an extreme level that controls opinion, that controls the narrative, and limits the amount of choice the public has. I mean, essentially, our choice and the effectiveness of our political systems depends on how well informed we, the public, are. You know, democracy breaks down when a public is uninformed. Final point here. Creates a chilling effect. If people feel being censored or punished for expressing their opinions, they may self-censor, avoiding important discussions or critiques. This limits creativity, debate, and the open exchange of ideas necessary for a healthy society. It's a big one today, folks. It's a big one today. I'm sure most of you would agree. That censorship is, I think, in aggregate, a very grey topic. That's why we present it in a very black and white, unfair way for you to vote, my friends. I'm going to post a poll in the chat saying censorship is a good thing. And you guys will tell me true or false. I see so many comments in the chat. False. Censorship is a way to silence other people's opinions. This is from Vero. A different thing is when those opinions are affected. I love this comment because she wrote the same thing on Instagram. And you can see, where every time I've had this debate with people, which has been many times, and let me be honest with you, quite frankly, I'm not in favor of censorship. But again, I am in favor of challenging my own ideas, right? And it's funny when I do play devil's advocate and I'm talking about this, how the longer you let someone talk about it, slowly they start convincing themselves otherwise. Censorship is a way to silence other people's opinions. A different thing is when these opinions are offensive to a certain group or society. Should those opinions be silenced then? I don't know. Everyone has the right to give their opinion as far as they don't offend others. There is no true or false to that question, I guess, says Carmen. Eugene, false, I hate it. Now I can't watch YouTube without using a VPN, yeah. That's the dark side of... there is very much a dark side of censorship. I know I make light of it with my what have the Romans ever done for us? Metaphor, if you want, for the want of a better word, simile. But just as censorship taken to an extreme is very dangerous, I feel like the out-and-out denial of its benefits is equally as dangerous. I mean, the truth here lies in the grey. False. Putting a curtain on a problem doesn't solve it. But hey, another side of mine is telling me that it's true. After all, who wants to see 80-year-old naked grandma on Twitter? Vero, I think all of us here empathize with my dear brother from another mother, Eugene. Russians don't have censorship, they have a dictatorship. Swizzer says there are so many different companies and independent newspapers that were being paid by US aid to push the left globalist agenda. Even Portugal that is irrelevant in the world had already 2 newspapers claimed to be closing because 80% of their income was US aid. Pedro says the unpopular opinion today is a masterpiece. Congratulations. Congratulations, Dan. We killed it today. And he's driving. Vero, as I'm sure all of us do, wish. Drive carefully, Pedro. Let's look at some messages I got on Instagram. Did get quite a lot here. In some cases, censorship is necessary, but all in all, it is bad, says Ethan. Layla. Censorship is a slippery slope. Who decides what's dangerous or harmful? Free speech is too important to let governments or corporations control what we see or say. Yeah, I mean, again, agree. And isn't it completely subjective? What is offensive to me? I mean, I have a very high tolerance for what is offensive. When people make fun of me, I mean, I laugh. I find it hilarious. As you've probably seen on the show. I don't know. I have a very high tolerance for this kind of thing. Whereas a lot of people don't. There are a lot of people who are really sensitive out there. Who's to say what is wrong and what is right? Some censorship is, this is from Malik, some censorship is necessary, like protecting kids from harmful content, but it should be used carefully. Too much control over information can be dangerous. Finally, Raj, I don't think censorship is ever the answer. Educating people to think critically is way better than just banning things. Let people make their own decisions instead of hiding things from them. All right, should we get to the results of the poll, Dan? I feel like we should. It was a good, thank you guys, by the way, for participating in today's unpopular opinion. But I will thank you all from the bottom of my heart for interacting. It's greatly appreciated. Okay, so the results of the poll today. Censorship is a good thing. I made that statement, and you guys said 88% false. All I will say is this, right? As you know, I'm not a big fan of censorship. Listen to the kind of show I have. It would be impossible to do if like a certain amount of freedom of speech wasn't allocated to me. But it is important, I think, to challenge our own ideas, to hold up a light to our own thoughts. And it's true, right? There are certain parts of censorship that we all rely on to live in a safe, and peaceful, within certain limits, peaceful society. We don't want our kids to have access to violent pornographic material. You know, we don't want people to spread hate speech. We don't want a corrupt media. We don't want all those things, and we rely on a certain amount of censorship to do that. And what worries me as we pull, as the pendulum swings, we all agree that censorship is a bad thing. But if we all agree that it's so bad that it shouldn't exist, what kind of a society would we live in? But you know what Grandpa Bo would say about that, right, Dan? He'd say, Rob, that's just your opinions, and opinions are like buttholes. Everyone has one. They all stink, including yours. Let's move on to today's unpopular opinion. Oh, no. Yeah, thank you, Dan. 100 humans. That's what I meant.